digestive tube itself, so the esophagus, the intestines, the stomach. Second part I'll go over is the accessory organs, the digestive accessory organs in the abdominal cavity, and then third I'll go through respiration start to finish, okay? Alright, so to start, food is in... Hey, can y'all keep it down a little bit so they can record me and be able to hear what I say later? Alright, thanks. Alright, so digestion begins with food ingested into the oral cavity here. When it's swallowed, it's going to become bolus and it's going to go into the pharynx. So what you have here is the larynx. The pharynx would be above that. Okay, so it's going to be in this region here. Now the pharynx is common for both the digestive tract and the respiratory tracts. And so after the pharynx, food is going to go into the esophagus, which is the back part right here. It's this thin, flat, muscular tube that sits behind the trachea. So the trachea is here. It's characterized by having these C rings that help maintain the integrity and the structure of the trachea. But the esophagus is going to be the one behind it, that thinner, flatter one. So food's going to go all the way down the esophagus, all the way down here, and into the stomach, which is going to be underneath the liver. So we have the stomach here. Remember I told you it has three parts: the pyloric region, the fundic region or the body, and then the pyloric region. So cardiac, fundic, pyloric. And then there's the cardiac sphincter, which you can't see, but what it looks like inside is it's a smaller opening than what the rest of the tube would be. And it's a muscle, so it just constricts, and that's how the sphincter works. It constricts to hold things in the stomach and prevent them from going back into the esophagus. And the same thing with the stomach at the small intestine. So coming out of the stomach, we're going to go into the duodenum. So the duodenum is the first part of the small intestines, and it's this little tube here. So if you follow it all the way around, you go to the jejunum eventually. So somewhere around here would be the jejunum, and then eventually it's going to turn into the ileum. Here, okay. So where the duodenum ends and the jejunum starts, there's not a distinct border. But how you tell is using microscopic anatomy or histology, and you can see they have different compositions within the intestines. So for the purposes of this, the two you'll be able to identify are the duodenum because it's closest to the stomach, and then the ileum because it's closest to the large intestines. Okay. So when you get to the ileum, you get to the end of the ileum, you come to what's called the ileocecal valve, which is going to separate the ileum from the cecum. This is your cecum here. It's this thin, pinkish sac that's in between your large intestine and your small intestine. So that's your cecum. And then from the cecum, food will go into the large intestine. Now the large intestine is the same thing as the colon. So humans have an ascending, a transverse, and a descending colon. So colon, small intestine, synonymous. The colon is going to lead into the rectum and then to the anus where feces is going to come out. So within the anus, you have two sphincters. You have an internal sphincter that is involuntary, and then you have an external sphincter, which is under voluntary control. So that's the tube itself. So now the accessory organs. The most important is the pancreas. So if you look in the middle of the intestines, you have what's called mesentery. It's this thin, sort of see-through structure that holds all the intestines together. But when you come over here next to the duodenum, you see it's not really completely see-through. There's this chunk of, it's an organ here. It's like a thin, muscular organ. That's your duodenum. It sits right underneath the pancreas, sorry. You have the pancreas, which sits right underneath the duodenum. So that's this organ. And it's intimately linked to the duodenum because it's going to secrete a lot of digestive enzymes such as amylase, lipase, nuclease, etc. So that's what makes the duodenum the most important site for digestion and reabsorption of nutrients in the digestive tract. So in addition to that, so I went over spread mesentery. You have what's called the greater omentum, which is this really gross, fatty layer, and it lays over all your intestines and sort of protects them and keeps them safe. So you have the spleen over here on the left side of the abdominal cavity. This is a lymphatic organ that aids in production of like immune cells, and also aids in the breakdown of blood cells. Then you have the liver up here. The liver is a large multi-lobed organ that aids in the breakdown of and the clearing of toxins from the body. So like after a night out of heavy drinking, your liver works very hard to clean you up, bring you back to normal. And then so the liver also makes bile. So bile helps emulsify fats. So after the liver makes the bile, it'll send it to the gallbladder, which is this green bean-sized organ, and it's going to store the gallbladder. It's going to store the bile there in the gallbladder. So then last is the cavity itself. The abdominal cavity itself is called the peritoneum, and it's got, I'm sorry, this is the abdominal cavity, but you have 2 layers in the abdominal cavity, and they line the organs and they line the cavity itself, and it's called the peritoneum. So you have 2 parts, the visceral peritoneum, which lines the organs themselves. So this is a shiny layer over it, and that's part of the peritoneum. And then this part on the wall is called the parietal peritoneum, and that's going to line the wall. So it's digestive system. So now in the thoracic cavity, you have a similar set of serous membranes as you do to the peritoneum, but here they're called the pleura. So the pleura is going to line the lungs and the wall of this thoracic cavity. So the layer that lines the wall is going to be the parietal pleura, and what lines the lungs and the trachea is going to be the visceral pleura. Okay? So going through the respiration, respiration starts when air comes in through the external nares, and it goes into the nasal cavity. So then from there, it's going to go into the pharynx, which I told you is a common opening for both digestion and respiration, but that's where it's going to diverge. So from there, air is going to pass through the glottis and into the trachea, or through the glottis of the larynx and into the trachea. So this whole like structure is the larynx, or your voice box. Now you have this flap here that sort of covers the opening. This is called your epiglottis. Now whenever you're breathing, whenever you're chewing and eating, your epiglottis closes to cover the glottis so that food doesn't go down into your trachea. So that's the epiglottis, is the flap. So then the glottis is the hole that leads to the trachea. So that's where my probe is in. So then lining the glottis, you have vocal cords. So directly on the side, which are these right here, you have the true vocal cords. And then on the outside, closest to the outside of the trachea, is your false vocal cords. Can y'all see those? So you've got your glottis here, which is the hole, and right on each side of my probe, touching my probe, is the true vocal cords. And then here on the very outside, these are your false vocal cords. Okay? So this is your trachea here. Your trachea is going to go down and branch into primary bronchi, which branch into secondary bronchi, into tertiary bronchi, bronchioles, and then alveoli. And the alveoli are the bulk of the lungs. So these are your lungs here, made up of millions and billions of alveolar sacs. And then lastly is the diaphragm. The diaphragm is a muscle that's innervated by the phrenic nerve. And when it contracts, it expands downward to expand the thoracic cavity and allow air in. And when it relaxes, it comes up into this concave position that pushes air out of the lungs, and you expire. So does anyone have any questions?